happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org and this show in particular. Correct me if I'm Norm. I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Alex Hannaford.
Yeah, thank you for having me,
Alex,
Norm.
thank you so much for coming. And if you've heard, if you have a especially keen ear, you heard a little accent coming out of Alex's mouth.
Oh,
where was that accent from?
Well, I'm from London, and in fact,
Oh, no way.
yeah, look, I just went to the book sale at Star Library and bought you that.
The charm of the English village. That is so sweet. Thank you very much.
It's pleasure.
And were you from an English village or
No.
a big town? No.
I'm from London, yeah.
But did you have relatives in English? Have you ever been to an English village?
Yeah, so when I turned 18, my mum and dad moved up. I think they're listening in as well, actually, from England.
Yeah,
but they
well.
moved up to an English village when I left home. So they left, they left London and moved up to an old farmhouse on some acres. Yeah.
Oh, nice. And where? What's the name of the town they moved up to?
It's a little village called High Wyche, which is Wicken, I think Wicken for wind or something.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, high wind.
Uh-huh. And is one or both of your parents Wiccans?
Maybe secretly.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a sister.
And
Yeah.
did you ever wonder about shit like that with your parents?
Did I wonder if they were Wiccans?
Well, or other kinds of things.
Or other kinds of crazy.
Are they actual monsters? Like,
No, they're pretty. I don't know about normal, but I was going to say normal. They're pretty normal.
right.
No witchcraft or devil worshipping or anything like that.
Right. It
that I
wasn't
know of.
an egregiously-
Maybe now they've moved to High Wyche, and I never lived there. I don't know what they get up to when I'm not there. And I live across the pond as well. So
Yeah.
I'm sure
Mom,
all
Dad,
sorts of-
you've got some accounting to tend to
exactly.
here.
Why don't they call in? Call in to Norm's show.
Oh, jeez. What time is it there? It must be pretty late. Maybe
There's a
10 p.m.?
4-hour
9 p.m.
because their clocks change on Sunday. There's always this like weird 4 weeks when the clocks change here first and then there 4 weeks later.
And what did they do in London and later on in High Wycombe?
In High Wyche.
High Wyche.
Well, nothing much. I mean, it's kind of it's commutable. So my dad was still able to get the train into London, but they moved into a village with 2 pubs and a post office. And in fact, one of the pubs has now been turned into an Indian restaurant. So you got
so you got
everything you need. You don't need anything else
in a small English town.
Yeah.
And did you grow up eating Indian food?
Yeah, every Friday night. Yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
So you and your friends would go out and get a couple of pints.
we would, and then get a curry. Yeah, to finish
That's it.
the night.
Anything in between the first pint and the curry?
Well, it was. I mean, if you're going on the lash, as we call it, if you're going out and drinking, sometimes you would end up in a curry house, or you'd end up in the kebab shop and get a chicken kebab. And
Not a fish and chips place?
not really. No, that was more not really drunken. Fish and chips was kind of more of an organized. Again, Friday or a Saturday night, and it'd be fish and chip night. Yeah.
And you grew up in what part of London?
I grew up in a sort of suburb in the east of London, a place called Woodford, and it's on the Central Line. If you've been to London,
Yeah.
so you could walk to the train, and it was a forest opposite, and it was sort of kind of rural, suburban. Yeah, it's like on the edge of a big forest, a big hunting forest actually that I think King Henry VIII planted. I might have my history completely wrong here, Norm, but I think
What did
that's
they hunt for there?
deer. I think they bred deer to hunt in this forest that we were sort of on the edge of. Yeah,
And birds or wild boars or other things?
probably. Yeah, I don't know actually.
So you weren't hunting? You weren't?
Oh no, I'm not a hunter. No, because I grew up in London. I'm a raging liberal who doesn't like hunting.
And were your folks hunters?
No, I mean no. Actually, that's not true. My dad shot pheasant and then now skeet. What do we call it in England? We don't call it skeet shooting.
We call it
skeet.
skeet.
Clay pigeon
Clay
shooting.
pigeons. Yeah. Have you ever done that? That's fun.
Yeah, I'm good at that.
That's fun.
I'm good at that.
You are?
Yeah.
I've done. I'm shite, as they say. Translate for your mom and dad. Yeah, not so good at that. So you went away to school, but not too far.
This feels really weird,
for
Lynn, 'cause,
university?
sorry, just to say, I'm normally on the other end of the interview.
Oh, yeah.
Thing. So
Yeah.
I've just realised how awkward this is for me.
Well, feel free to just ask yourself questions, and I'll have some of this cocktail you
That
brought.
might help,
What
honestly.
what did you bring? Well, let's dive in.
All right, let's go. There's always a Negroni. There's nothing
Wonderful.
else.
Here, will you do this? I'm not sure I
yeah.
know how to work that complicated shaker. Well, thanks for bringing a drink. A beautiful way to end a week. Thank you so much.
Quite boozy. It was a debate whether to do something called an Americano, which is like a Negroni.
Cheers.
Cheers. But without the gin. Instead of gin, you replace it with soda water. So you have vermouth and Campari and soda.
Right.
And it means you can have, 14 of them and still drive. But this is a bit boozy, so you can probably only have one.
Right. Huh, and what kind of gin do you use?
I don't know. This was whatever was in the liquor cabinet.
So
Usually Hendrix, but I don't know what this
You're
is.
not an English gin snob.
No, not really.
No, we've got one of them here. Matt, who started this station, is kind of a
he's a
gin
gin
snob.
snob. Yeah.
He really likes this gin called Cotswolds.
Oh, I don't think I've heard of that.
I hadn't, but I guessed that it came from
This is nice.
Cotswolds over there. This is a yummy cocktail. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So we were at you leaving home in
Back to
a huff,
me.
leaving
Back
the
to me feeling awkward
abusive
again.
parents, going off to college somewhere, university.
Yeah. So I took a gap year,
Right.
which I'm trying to encourage my daughter to do when she leaves school, because I think it's the best thing you can do.
What'd you do in the gap year?
When I used to teach. Well, this is why I've decided to come in and talk to you today, Norm, because I want to talk to you about sailing.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But I used to, when I was in my late teens, well, in fact, all from when I was 12 onwards, I went on sailing courses, learned to sail. And then when I was 17, I did my assistant instructor's course, the RYA, the Royal Yachting Association, and then my instructor's course the year later. So I went and taught sailing. So during my gap year, I taught sailing for half the year, and then the other half I went out to Hong Kong.
Wow.
And did an internship at the South China Morning Post newspaper.
Wow. And did you have opportunities to sail in Hong Kong on like an old junk or anything like that?
Yeah, I didn't say. I went on a old junk. In fact, I think there was only one in the harbour at that point, like a tourist, China junk. But I did sail there, actually. I think, actually, if I remember rightly, I even taught for a bit in the harbour at a little sailing club. But yeah, I did some sailing out there, but I didn't go there for sailing. My dad's brother lived out there. He worked out there, he lived there with his family. And so I had somewhere to go and stay. So, went and stayed with him and wrote off to every media, because I had already got a place at university to do media studies, and you can then defer for a year. So I got the place and I deferred, and then I went off to Hong Kong and applied for all these internships and jobs at different places, and ended up in the editorial library of the South China Morning Post. Have another sip of my
South China newspaper?
Yeah.
Wow. In the editorial library. So you're supporting reporters and journalists with fact checking and late research, I'm
Clips,
guessing?
yeah, getting clips out of the library and stuff. And I didn't know. I knew I was going to do media, but I didn't know what in the media. So, the course I was going to start was radio, television, film, journalism. And no one really knew. That's why everyone kind of chose this generalist course. But I always say journalism found me, because when I was in Hong Kong, I wrote off to 50 different places to try and get some work, and the South China Morning Post wrote back. So it kind of seemed like journalism was a good, print journalism was a good idea. And in fact, I made friends with some of the people on the features desk, and they invited me back the following year for a proper internship, which is what I went and did. And
wow.
Yeah.
And you were writing for them the next year for the proper internship?
Yeah. So they literally, day one, I'll tell you a story. So day one, I was on the features desk, and this amazing journalist called Hedley Thomas, who I'm still kind of peripherally in touch with, he's back in Australia now, was the deputy features editor. And on day one, he said, I'd never written anything before, and apart from I'd been to high school, and he said, right, I need you to go out and interview Maria Muldaur for us, who sang Midnight at the Oasis. Yeah. So I turn up at this posh hotel in downtown, in central Hong Kong, And I go to reception, and Maria's not in reception waiting for me. And so they call up to her room, and she says, "Send him up." I'm 18 years old at this point, and very green. And so I go up to Maria Maldur's room, and she opens the door. She's in a she's got like a towel around her head because she's just come out of the shower.
Oh, I hope the story goes the way I want it to.
She was perfectly dressed and everything.
Yeah.
But I was a little bit nervous. So we did the interview in there, and she was delightful. And yeah, I didn't really know what I was doing, but then Headley helped me shape the story when I came back.
Shape the interview into a good story.
Yeah.
And had you taken a stab at the first draft of the story, and then
I think
Headley?
so.
I love the name Headley, by the way.
Headley, yeah. Back in the day, I mean, I remember coming back and having to transcribe the audio. Of course, now we don't do that. We get AI to transcribe it, which is, the most laborious, boring job of a print journalist when you have to sit and transcribe. Takes ages because it's not. If you do an hour interview, it doesn't take an hour to transcribe it. It takes, 3 hours because you keep pressing pause because you can't type that fast.
Right.
And yeah, anyway, so that was, God, this is a long time ago. My memory's, I'm 51. I can't really remember what I did when I was 18.
Well, that's no...
I know I drank too much in Hong Kong.
No more excuses. But you knew Marie Mulder. Everybody knew that song back in the day. So you must have been a little bit nervous interviewing her.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely nervous. But she was very gentle with me. And she called me the British Brad Pitt, which is very kind because I definitely didn't look anything like Brad Pitt. But I think maybe to her, she was probably my age now, actually, so I probably did look like Brad Pitt.
Right. That's so sweet. So do you remember with the specific things that Headley told you to do to turn that blob of a first draft into a cohesive and good article?
I think what I learned from him was less about... It was more about just having the guts to kind of go out and just do it. Just don't even think about it. Go out and get the story. There was one, I remember him guiding me on this one story, and I can't remember the specifics other than the headline was Rich Men, Poor Men at Banks Bean Fest. And it was about the world, I think it was the Monetary Fund, International Monetary Fund or something. Anyway, there was something had happened, and it was costing X million dollars or whatever. And Headley had said we need to do a story about what that money could be better spent on, and so we could find all these, what would it cost to like support this one charity for a year or whatever. Anyway, it was that kind of story. But I was like, and he showed me the way. I did a lot of good fun stories that in those 6 months.
And during those 6 months, did you feel yourself getting really hooked on this job?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to write about write features, because features for me, and by the way, this was the internship, then did my degree, and then after college, I went and worked on a local newspaper. So I was on the doing news. So I've done both, hard news and features. But features is great, and actually we can come onto this a bit. I'm kind of jumping forward, but what I like about features is it's sort of AI proof. You can get AI to rewrite a press release, or you can, at some point give it access to police reports, and it can rewrite police reports and all the rest of it, news stories. But what it can't do is that kind of shoe leather reporting, going out. When I was in Texas, I did a lot of reporting on the border, a lot of reporting on the death penalty. And so it can't go to prison and sit in front of an inmate and find out and bring you back. This is the thing about features that I love. You're bringing back not just the voice of that person, but you're bringing back the smell of the place. And I did a story once on, do you mind if I jump forward and back all the time? This is kind of how my mind works. But once I did a story on an execution. I'd been covering the death penalty for so long, and I had never witnessed an execution.
Oof.
So I went and witnessed an execution in Oklahoma, and what I think features does, I was given 7,000 words to write this piece, or 6,000 words.
It's a healthy chunk of
wordage. Yeah, like sort of 7 pages of magazine, and so. But it was really important to me to bring the reader inside the essentially the death chamber with me. What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What's the temperature like? AI can't do any of that, and never will be, as far as I.
And who was the poor soul who lost their life? Who was put to death by the state that you witnessed?
So it was a guy who had, this was so this is actually a really thing that I will forever be kind of annoyed about and upset about. It's So I had covered the death penalty in Texas for a long, long time. And I'd been to death row in Texas more times than I can even remember. I mean, just so many times. And sat in front of these inmates. And I got to know a lot of them because I would go back and do interview after interview and write to them and you know, tell their stories. And when I applied to witness an execution, because they have a media witness for every execution because you're the sort of the public kind of eyes and ears, I guess.
Right.
They wouldn't let me do it, and they kept trying to find excuses, and it seemed very arbitrary in Texas. Like they'd let me in to interview these inmates, but suddenly they were. I think the truth is that they were worried about European coverage of
Right.
the death penalty. So
Do you have the death penalty in England?
no, it was abolished in '66.
Right.
And so, you know, they would, they said, oh, it has to be a publication in the place where the murder happened. And that had never been the case before. So they just kept putting these obstacles in. So anyway, I ended up witnessing in Oklahoma. And I didn't know any of the inmates. I didn't know this inmate. I didn't know, you know, I read up about him, obviously, but it was more, at the time, there was a lot of news about the drugs, the drug protocol that they were using and how
Right.
there wasn't availability. So they were sort of experimenting.
What was the sodium
Thiopental. So that when I witnessed an execution, I think it was, wasn't the triple drugs. It used to be a triple concoction that they felt was sort of, I don't know, ethical. Anyway, I'm really bringing the tone down on a Friday night here, aren't I? While we're drinking out
Yeah,
the
thanks a lot, Alex. And I read somewhere in looking into your stuff that at one point they'd run out of the sodium type of poles.
Yeah, there was 3 drugs. One stops the heart, one stops the lungs, and one sedates. And so they would give the sedative. It would be a sedative first, and then they would stop the lungs and then stop the heart.
Oof.
And so there was this argument that they would, you know, potentially be conscious but not able to breathe and struggling for breath, but you wouldn't know because their muscles would. So there was all that. I would write about that and the rest of it. The interesting thing about the death penalty, honestly, for me, covering it, was less about innocence, because there was a lot of people covering innocence and doing these powerful stories. I felt it was actually just always seeming to find a problem with every case that wasn't about innocence. And I felt in the end my job was to write a story where the reader would think, hang on a minute, that doesn't sound right, you know,
Right.
because there was a disproportionate, you know, for example, there's a disproportionate number of people on death row. It's actually the race of the victim, which is the telling thing. So there's more, you are much more likely, I can't remember the statistic, but much more likely to get the death penalty if you kill a white person than if you kill a black person, for example. So it was things like that. Or, you know, I'd cover a case where a defense attorney fell asleep during the trial or something like that. You know, while I was covering the death penalty, the Supreme Court abolished the death penalty for people who were juveniles when they committed the crimes. But, you know, looking back, I think it's insane that I was covering the death penalty when it was actually legal to execute someone who killed someone at the age of 17.
Or someone who's mentally infirm.
Yeah.
They're not all there.
Yeah. Well, in fact, so someone I've interviewed before, a guy called Walter Bell, who was known as the Dean of Death Row. He went to death row the year I was born, 74, and he'd been on death row when I interviewed him longer than anybody else. I think he'd been on death row, must have been 30-something years. And Walter went to the death chamber. I've always thought it was 3 times, but I looked it up the other day. I think it was 5 times. I think he went to the death chamber 3 times, was read his last rites 3 times, and given his last meal 3 times. And they stayed his execution every time. But actually, I ended up finding out that he actually got 5 execution dates. And now he's in regular prison, and he's not going to be executed because they realize he was intellectually disabled.
Did you get to interview him?
Yeah.
And how did he feel being that close all those times and then sort of getting a reprieve?
I mean, honestly, like when I interviewed him, I came away thinking this guy's intellectually disabled. He doesn't really understand what's going on.
Right.
You know? And even now, he wrote to me the other day and said, he every time I've written to him, he writes back telling me he's about to get out. I don't think he ever will.
Right. Oof. And are you, you lived in America a long time, in Texas
Yeah.
a long time. Are you for or against the death penalty?
Oh, I'm anti, but
Yeah.
I think when I first covered it, I remember the first day, 2003, I went up to the prison to interview 3 inmates. And I remember on the drive there from Austin thinking, if something happened to your family, I'd probably agree with it, I remember coming out of the prison thinking, there is no way I agree with this, because
Right.
I realized that these people aren't, it's very easy if you've never met somebody who's on death row, which most people haven't, that these people are monsters, right? But they're not. I mean, I don't know what your vision of a monster is, but these are people that could easily be, put it this way. I've interviewed people who have, I've been in the bar with someone having a drink with a hitman who's killed 7 people and gone to prison for it, and then turned state's evidence, and after 7 years is on the outside having dinner with me. So it doesn't make any sense that, like Walter Bell killed at the age of 18, killed his employer, and is now in prison for the rest of his life, and they've thrown away the key.
Right.
I'm not saying that he shouldn't be in prison for the rest of his life. I'm just saying there's a disparity between sentencing.
Yeah, you said something in one article I read that really stuck with me. You said, we don't kill, the state doesn't kill monsters, they kill the people.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting perspective, because it's really easy to just push the plug in or the plunger for a monster.
Yeah.
But when you see these potential death row victims as people, it must get a little harder.
Yeah, I think so. And then when I witnessed an execution, you're in a room with the inmate's family and friends, and then there's a separate room behind you, behind one-way glass, of the victim's family, his victim's family. So I'm not with them, but you realize that there's a whole, there's so many victims of this. I've also done a story on death row guards, and that's a whole other thing that isn't talked about. And the victim, how there's massive rates of depression and suicide among.
You'll bet.
Yeah, because they're in that system together. This is really depressed. So sorry about this.
Well, let's talk about the movie you made on this.
Oh yeah,
40 miles.
Last 40 miles. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd been covering it for a while, and I had the Walter Bell in my head, this story of this guy who was just to set the scene. So in Texas, unlike a lot of states that have the death penalty, you have death row, which is in a town called Livingston, which is a logging town, a big, supermax prison, just as you'd imagine, high razor wire fence or whatever. That's where they keep the male inmates on death row. So there's a wing of the prison that's just for death row inmates. And on a day of an execution, the morning of an execution, the inmate is driven 40 miles to another town called Huntsville, which most people will have heard of. And Huntsville, Texas is where the execution chamber is. So they're not executed on death row, they're executed in Huntsville. And you have to drive 40 miles to get there. And that drive, that 40 miles, which I called the last 40 miles, is one of the most beautiful drives in Texas. And this was the kind of irony in my head. It's like you go across Onalaska Lake Livingston, through a town called Onalaska, and it's the piney woods of East Texas, and it's really stunning. And it just occurred to me that this is the last thing these guys ever see. And Walter Bell had seen this 3 times because he'd been taken to his death 3 times, and then just kidding, and driven him back to Livingston. So I kind of had this idea for a sort of semi-fictionalized film. And I had some friends at the time that were animators, and they said, have you thought about an animation? And I said, no. So I wrote a script, 15-minute script, and we ended up doing a Indiegogo, like Kickstarter thing, raising some money and making this film, and then putting it into film festivals. And it became the last 40 miles, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I only saw snippets of it for free online.
Yeah, the whole thing is free online, actually. It's on Vimeo now. You can see both, the trailer and the thing.
Looks amazing. And did that make you want to do other films?
Yeah, it did, actually, and then I never did.
Oh.
So, yeah, I don't know, I'd like to.
Yeah, and what did you as a journalist, you're always telling stories. Mm-hmm. And, the printed page is great for that. The imagination is great. but having like a movie, having like music and sound effects and moving images and all that stuff must have been fun for you to be at the bottom of that learning curve.
Yeah, it was. It was actually really interesting for me to work with other people as well, because it's a very lonely profession.
Right.
And particularly as I've been freelance for so long, so you're writing a story, you're going off and getting the, doing all the it's a reporting trips. You're going away for a week, 2 weeks longer, and you come back and you're interviewing more people on the phone, maybe doing another trip. But it's all on your own, and you're then writing the story, and then you work with an editor, but remotely. So this was kind of cool, like working with, other people, and it was a collaborative project. So that was really good. I really enjoyed that. I've did that with a podcast as well. So I was working with a producer friend of mine. It was very much the two of us doing everything.
What was that podcast?
So the first came out in 2019 and it ended in 2020. And we're just working on a follow-up updated episode actually now, because it was a 12-part podcast and criminal justice podcast, and so there's some stuff that's happened that we're going to update our listeners about.
Was that the one you won a bunch of awards for?
Yeah, we got silver in the British Podcast Awards, and it got did well, did pretty well. We got number 1 on iTunes. But it was in the early kind of days of podcasts when Serial had come out and everyone was kind of excited about them, and we did it on a shoestring budget, but yeah, it was fun.
And are you still a British citizen?
Yeah, I'm dual.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were first here,
do you want to hear my American accent?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Should we do the rest of the show in an American accent?
Yeah.
Is that good?
And I'll do my worst Cockney accent. Oh, but read all about it.
Oh, blimey, it's Dick Van Dyke in the studio.
It is Dick Van Dyke, well identified.
Hello, Mary Poppins.
Yeah. That's the only British accent any American really knows. Yeah,
exactly.
But you wrote that you had to, when you first came to the U.S., you could only work for foreign publications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because you'd get paid from there. You weren't taking any jobs from
Americans.
Yeah. Now that you are a dual citizen, is that still the case? Or
no. Now I'm a proper American with a taxpayer with a naturalization certificate signed by Barack Obama.
Oh,
so it was 2000.
Well, I'm sorry, those aren't accepted anymore.
Yeah, actually, they'll probably kick me. I did wonder that actually, if it's like null and void.
Yeah.
Should we have another drink, Noel?
Yeah, sure. Let's have another drink. That'll be perfect. That'll ease the jarring segue I have lined up for you.
Oh,
you said you like sailing, and my question is, what's your opinion of the ship named Bodie McBoatface?
Oh, so this was. Wait, hang on a minute. What?
Cheers.
Cheers. Boats McBoatface. So there was you'd have to remind me, there was a competition to name. Well, what was it to name?
It was
a warship.
Yeah, I think it was like sort of the British equivalent of the Coast Guard.
I think so. Yeah. Oh. So I think it was like the HMS whatever.
Yeah.
They needed a new.
They crowdsourced the name.
Well, so I'm gonna segue into a very. You're gonna not know why I'm going there, but I'm gonna explain something. So David Blaine, the magician, came to London. Right, this is a bunch of years back. You can Google this because it's so funny. It makes me chuckle every time I think about it. He's a good magician, but he also takes himself very seriously.
Yes,
kind of loves himself.
Yeah.
And so
he's a long-time listener. Hi, Dave.
So he goes to London, and he goes up in a glass box above the Thames, and the idea is that he's got to somehow, I don't know whether he had to get out of it or survive in it or something. I can't remember. But the point, this is actually a really good point. No one cared, and in England, definitely no one cared, and certainly not in London when everyone's been out to the pub drinking, and he's up there, in his boxer shorts. So people are throwing hot dogs and kebabs up to the thing. It's splatting on the thing, and no one cares about David Blaine. So the press are doing this thing. Anyway, my point is that they're naming this warship and thinking it's going to be a sensible thing. They don't realise that the British like to not take stuff too seriously. So the winner was Boaty McBoatface, and I think they had to call it that, right?
Yeah, that's the way I understood the story. I loved that so much. Mm-hmm. Crowdsourcing gone wonderfully right.
Do you think your assistant could get some ice from
I wish.
No, we probably not.
All my assistants quit. They last about a second and a half. They're like, I don't even work for you. What do you mean? So, Mike, besides your English, you don't need ice.
No, that's true. Actually,
You
we
still
drink
have
beer
like
without.
a sliver of a cube in
We
there.
drink
That's
warm beer.
Too much. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, there's a note to Krog there. Actually, can you start getting, because there's a thing in England. It's the warm beer is actually ESB. I don't know what it stands for, but that's what
English
it is.
special bitters.
Right. And they don't have any of that. And the stuff they have there is good. They have some good IPAs and stuff. They need a room temperature ESB. It would just
They
make my
do.
day.
They need some fucking bitter.
For my
at
52nd
all.
birthday in October the 1st.
October
This is a message to Dave the comedian.
There was a bar in Beacon. I think it was called Dogfish.
Oh yeah.
And they had two different kinds of bitter. And it was served, a la Temp du Cave, whatever, right?
Well, that's interesting actually, because people think it's room temp, but it's not. It's the
No,
it's the basement,
the cellar, yeah.
the cellar,
Which is like more like 60 degrees than
Yeah.
80 degrees.
Yeah.
But it's not. I mean, I think beers like a Budweiser on the tap here comes out as 40, probably 45 degrees or something.
Actually,
really
you know what we
cold.
could use? I've just thought this is great. We could use this interview to dispel myths about the British. How are my teeth?
Better than mine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Tell your listeners how good my teeth.
My teeth suck.
No, not about yours.
His are
mine are good.
much, much better.
So British people
Lovely
have good teeth. Number one. Number two. What was the second one? Oh yeah, warm beer isn't room temperature; it's cellar temperature. So I don't want to hear any of that anymore. Oh, NHS, brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait 3 years to get your teeth fixed.
No. Well, you've caught me out, because the NHS, even though we do have NHS dentists, it's kind of difficult to find an NHS dentist. But certainly if you have, cancer, you're going to get treated in a few weeks.
Yeah, well, knock on wood.
Yeah.
Hopefully none of us are treated for that in a few weeks.
That's my, by the way, my, a catastrophic health insurance. I do have health insurance. It's not very good. But if the shit hits the fan, Norm, I'm on the next United flight to London.
That's your catastrophic health insurance.
Yeah.
Amazing. And a solid plan.
Yeah.
Nice to have dual citizenship. So we were on sailing before we got to Bodie McBoatface, my favorite ship name. You got into sailing, you went to school on one of the coasts of England?
No. Well, yes, actually, I did. I
Southampton,
suppose I did. Southampton. But I didn't do any sailing in Southampton, really. It was just a lot of drinking.
Oh.
Unfortunately, there was, on the way to college from we had a halls of residence where you would stay in the first year, and what do you call it, freshman year. There was a pub called the Hog's Head en route to class, and me and Darren Hedden, I'm going to shout out Darren Hedden now, would stop off for a drink, and one drink turns to another, and then maybe you miss a few lessons and stuff.
But you graduated in good time.
I did. I mean, I did. I could have done a lot better at college. I'll tell you, talking of Darren and drinking, there was one semester, I don't even know if my mum and dad know this actually, but one semester, there was another pub called Harvey's that actually me and my friend Greg, who's a brilliant animator actually now, so he did very well. We decided one semester it'd be really funny to go to Harvey's and skip class, but from 11 when it opened to 11 at night when it closed, every day for a semester. It may have been a term actually, which is still a long time, but we did it, and I'm very proud of that.
So 12 hours a day at Harvey's for a semester.
12 hours a day, and to be fair, we didn't drink all day. We had coffee with the landlord in the morning,
Yeah.
and really, talked through the issues of the day.
Packet of crisps for
And
lunch.
packet of crisps for lunch.
Yeah.
And then, probably the drinking would have started about 12 at 1, something like that.
12. Yeah, you're adding an hour for your parents who are listening and staring at each other, rolling their eyes.
Well, it's okay because university was free back then.
Oh,
Talking
sweet.
of England and the great things about
So
England.
what were you doing to get the money to drink all day at Harry's or Harvey's or
So
Hogshead?
I think my dad was giving me some money, actually. But also, I was writing. You remember I
see.
told you about the internship?
So your
at
folks
the-
were giving you money for books and
They were,
lodging and
they were.
stuff.
But also, I was writing for the South China Morning Post, doing interviews with bands that were coming through the UK that were then on their way to Hong Kong.
Right.
So I was earning some money from
and
that.
that's
so.
a lucrative gig. Covering bands for the South China Post. Covering English bands for the South China Post. The path to riches.
Beer was cheap back then.
Yeah, there you go. So when did you really get into sailing?
So I think I really got into sailing. I mean, I was 12 years old and we'd go every year to this sailing club, and it was a floating sailing club. It was, you've heard of the River Mersey where the Beatles are from.
Yeah, sure.
So it was old Mersey ferry that used to go across the River Mersey, and it was decommissioned and sent down to a county called Devon in the southwest coast of England, and it became a floating sailing school. And it was just magical. It was they took the engine room out and turned it into a bar. There's a theme here, Norm. And all the kids, it was 80 kids, would come on board for a week sailing, and all the staff would be liveaboard. And you'd go off every day in small dinghies, 12 foot to 15, 16 foot dinghies, and teach them sailing. And so I learned, but then became an instructor. So I was hooked. It was great. I was never into racing. I was always into cruising, teaching. But it was just so much fun. The
Right.
people I met were people that I've known, still are friends with today.
And go on.
Well, and I was going to say, and then, it's been peaks and troughs. So we were in Austin, lived in Austin for a long time. Obviously, I had a boat, but I very rarely sailed it,
Right.
even though there were lakes there. And when we moved to Rhinebeck in 2020, we were driving over the Rhinecliff Bridge and looking over, seeing boats sailing. And I said to Courtney, my wife, we've got to sail. This is right on our doorstep.
One last thing
Yeah,
before
yeah.
we come to Rhinebeck.
Yeah.
You volunteer as a crew member on London lifeboats
How
between
did-
the
yeah,
Tower
yeah, I did,
Bridge and Chiswick.
Yeah, so
I love that you were working lifeboats and
so our lifeboat in England, we don't have
on the Thames.
on the Thames. Yeah, so that's actually a cool story about how not how my involvement, but how the lifeboats happened on the Thames. So, I don't know where to begin. So the lifeboats in England, on every coastal town in England, since the 1800s, or maybe even earlier, there've been lifeboats that are. It's a non-profit called the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. So it's not a government agency. It's completely funded by donations and philanthropy. And they decided that they save lives at sea. That was what they were designed to do: save lives at sea. So you would have people that were out cruising or working in fishing boats and whatever. If they get into trouble, the RNLI would go and rescue them. And I think it was either the late 90s or early 2000s. I think it was the late 90s. There was a tragedy on the Thames. A boat called the Marchioness was a tourist boat, and it sank, and there was a lot of people that died. And the RNLI were asked if they could put a lifeboat on the Thames because it was such an awful thing. And they said yes. They did a study or whatever, and a couple of years later they ended up putting 4 lifeboats on the Thames. One at Gravesend, which is near the mouth of the
Right.
ocean. One
Where
at Tower.
the Mayflower left from.
Yeah, one at Tower Bridge, which is the bridge that everyone thinks is London Bridge, but it's Tower Bridge. One in Chiswick and one in Teddington. And I did a story. I was working for the Evening Standard in London as a journalist, and I did a story on when the lifeboat came to London. And I was a sailor, and I just spoke to them. They, it was crewed. Each boat is crewed by 2 permanent members, so they rotate out every week, and 1 volunteer. And I asked if I could become a volunteer. So you go through training, and I had to give up. You have to give up at least a 24-hour kind of stint. So you either stay the night in their accommodation, which is floating accommodation on the Thames. But anyway, long story short, the tragedy of it is that they have now become the busiest lifeboats in the country. Out of all the coastal ports included, the Thames lifeboat on Tower Bridge is the busiest lifeboat in the country because of suicides and suicide attempts
Oh boy.
off the bridge. Yeah.
He gads.
So we would
Talk about depressing jobs.
I know, we'd be called out in the middle of the night and have to go and rescue someone from the beach or whatever. And
Right.
yeah.
Have you seen this movie, actually produced by a local Rhinecliff person, Carolyn Marks Blackwood, called The Keeper, about a boat that patrolled the Hudson River?
I
top to
haven't.
bottom.
I haven't.
This coming Saturday, no, when is it? Is it? Anyway, in a week or so, it's playing at Upstate Films.
Okay.
It's a phenomenal movie.
Yeah.
About this guy who more or less single-handedly kept this boat afloat to patrol the river and test the waters and all this stuff. It's a beautiful, beautiful
wow.
story.
Yeah.
Made
I'd love
possible
to see
by
that.
Rhinecliff.
Someone here.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
have a lot of interesting people in Rhinebeck and Rhinecliff.
Yeah. Well, let me ask, is there anything going on now? Wait, let's go back to you and your wife crossing the bridge. You saw all these boats, and you thought, we got to get one, or you need to get involved. Did you get a boat?
Yeah, I got an old O'Day. Well, first of all, got an old O'Day 20, which is a 1970s, little trailer sailor. And it was good fun. It has a little cabin, and I had that for a couple of years and went out on the Hudson, kept it at Norrie Point. And then Scout, my daughter, thought it was boring because it was not very fast, honestly, to be honest. It's one of those boats. I used to go on it and single-handed sail with like Radiohead blaring out and a beer. And that was just gloriful. That's the wrong word. I've had 2 Negronis, so I'm going to make words.
That's good. It's a word now.
So she thought it was boring because it wasn't very fast, which is true. So I decided she's actually probably right. So I got rid of it and got a Thistle, which is another, even older boat, actually from the 60s, from this old guy in Connecticut that was selling his boat. He had too many. He wasn't sailing it anymore. He kept it in amazing condition. It's a fiberglass boat, but there's no cabin. It's 17 foot and it's very, very overpowered for what it is. So it's got a massive sail area compared to the boat.
Oh, I
so
see.
it goes very fast. So I took Scout out on it, and we're heeling right over, and she's screaming. And I thought, this is great. So next month I put it back on the not on the mooring, but I keep it down at the Rondout. Yeah.
Okay, just over the Rondout. And do you take any other kids out for sailing? Or any plans to do?
No, I'm happy. I know where we're going with this. Yeah, sorry, that's
where?
the reason I've wanted to. Thanks for
Do
segueing.
tell.
Yeah, I've been the 2 Negronis in. I've forgotten why I'm here.
I love the way you're just about to pass on it.
Yeah.
Nice
No,
segue to
nothing
nowhere.
to talk about there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Oh,
Thank you for
do tell.
mentioning that. Yeah. So Braden, who actually connected us, introduced me to a teacher at school called Laura Kuffner, who I think has also been on this show. Because we're both sailors, and so we met for coffee. And Laura had this idea that she wanted to start a youth sailing club for the high school students. And so it's been, more than a year now, but we've very cleverly kind of put together 2 non-profits and brought them together to actually make this happen. And one is Culture Connect. So Laura sits on the board of Culture Connect, and now River Connect is a branch of Culture Connect, and it is designed to get kids out on the water because we're right on the Hudson River, and the Hudson River is not used, and most kids here and most adults here have probably never been on it.
Right.
And it's criminal to me that, we have this resource right on our doorstep. And then the other nonprofit is the Hudson Maritime Museum in the Rondout.
In Kingston.
In Kingston, the Rondout. And they have instructors, insurance, boats, and they're really safety oriented. And they have these 420s, which are 15-foot, 14-foot boats that are very fast and very fun. They were an Olympic class boat. And they had always wanted to start some sort of high school program. So we said, oh, great, well, that's what we want to do. So the only stipulation they had was they wanted it to involve Kingston students as well. So we've got 8 students from Rhinebeck and 8 students from Kingston who are going to come together in a few weeks for the inaugural session. They're going to learn to sail. We're going to put them out in the boats. There are no adults in the boats. We're in the rescue boats. We're going to volunteer to help as well.
Wow.
And eventually we want to, 2 things. So, I told you I never really got into racing. So there are 2 ways to go in sailing. You either go cruising and you just have fun, maybe get into big boats, do whatever, whatever, and then racing. And we might have a natural kind of split.
Yeah.
So we're up for starting a racing team as well down the line, but very exciting, and maybe ice boating in the winter.
I love that. And will that be based on the Rondout?
It will. It'll be based there. And then I think in the winter, if we keep it going during the winter, there'll be kind of shore-based stuff and maybe ice boating up in Tivoli Bays. Yeah. I mean, it's all happening. So we had our first meeting at the high school yesterday to sort of see who would be interested. We had 14 kids turned up. I have to say, I'm actually glad that I'm on here because there are parents listening. We have a lot of boys that want to do it, and no girls apart from my daughter. So we really do want girls to sign up to it as well. And kind of, we've got 8 places initially, so it'd be great if we can have a balance.
And
but
from Kingston, is it mostly boys too?
I don't know, actually. We're not involved in kind of recruiting from there,
right.
So I'm not sure. But it would be great if it was kind of more kind of gender balance. But it's like incredibly good fun. I mean, these kids are going to be going out, they're learning the basics, they're going to be in the boats, learning capsize drill, all safety, all the rest of it. But then they'll be out and learning all the points of sailing, where to kind of have your sail when the wind's coming from a certain direction, and parts of the boat and all the rest of it. And then it's a great way of meeting people as well.
Right.
As I said, I've still got a huge group of friends that I used to sail with that I still see every year when I go back.
I love the idea of kids from Rhinebeck getting together with kids from Kingston on the water, and working towards this like mutual dream, this task of getting a boat going.
Yep.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, it would be good.
What a great idea. And you said for the parents listening, and I thought for the parents listening, I'll ask this: how many Negronis is it okay to drink when you're taking kids out on the water?
Well, you know what? When I was teaching sailing, health and safety wasn't what it is now.
Yeah.
So actually, it wasn't really the drinking and then teaching sailing. I don't think that ever happened. But the hangovers and teaching sailing were another thing altogether.
Yeah. But the answer I'm looking for is, of course, none.
Of course, none.
Everybody's completely sober.
But actually, it wasn't Negronis. It was Dark and Stormies. Of course.
Oh, Dark and Stormies. Another lovely drink. Well, I wish my kids were younger so they could do that. What a wonderful thing to expose them to this natural wonder.
Yeah.
That, as you say, so many people don't really interact
with.
with.
It's empty. You walk, you go hiking along the river or drive over the river, and it's empty most of the time.
Yeah.
With the boat that I bought, I've been down and sailed after the sunset, at night sailing on the Hudson. There's nobody out there. And it's like a magical thing. Yeah. So, yeah.
What a treat. Well, thanks for doing that for the high schoolers here in Rhinebeck.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll be good fun.
Yeah. All right. For everybody tuning in who's not aware, I'm talking with Alex Hannaford, and I just want to read... reading your articles on your website. What's the website again? AlexHannaford.com?
AlexHannaford.com, yeah.
Yeah. There's a little tab for stories, and every single story sounds like, I read 2 or 3 of them, but they all sound so freaking amazing. The MAGA granny who stormed the Capitol, then refused Trump's pardon. It's like, I want to read about that. These people are building whites-only towns in the U.S. That sounds amazing. Why did Trump pardon Silk Road master?
He means amazing as in the story's amazing. I'm just
the story.
Yeah.
This one, I moved to America's hippest city. This is what they won't tell you about it, which ran in the Independent. Oh my God, on and on and on. Does it matter how a condemned man dies? A philosophical thing. Jamal Khashoggi's widow on their life and death. That's a story that's really, really super fascinating to me. But we're running out of time. We don't have time to get to all of this. The Great Escapee. That's where I read that. Fucking great story.
Poor Stephen.
But I want to stay with this one. I moved to America's hippest city. This is what they won't tell you about it. That ran in the Independent. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that story was to sort of plug my book. I did a lot of press around.
Oh, the story came second?
Yeah, did a lot of press around the book coming out. So I had a book out November 2024.
Yeah.
Called Lost in Austin, The Evolution of an American City. And it was part sort of, so it was about Austin, which, everybody, if you mention Austin to anyone here, even if they've either been there or not been there, they will say, oh, I've heard that place is, so cool. And it's like America's coolest city.
Right.
And I think we had moved from Austin to Rhinebeck because we were over it, really. I mean, sort of it become too hot. The climate was just unbearable. There was a massive tech boom, so it was just like lots of people from California and elsewhere had kind of moved there. Prices were going through the roof for everything. It wasn't the place that it was when I moved there in 2003. And I was talking to I have an agent, and I was talking to him about it, and he said, I think there's a book there because everyone thinks of it as, the greatest city in America. He said, what are the other things? I said, well, the other thing that, affects people is the cost of living. I mean, it's just like too expensive. They think it's this artist mecca, this mecca for musicians and artists. But they actually can't afford to park downtown, let alone live there anymore. I mean, it's insanely expensive. This is back in when I sort of started writing the book a few years back. And so he said, I think there's a book there, let's write a proposal. So I wrote the proposal. We got the book deal with Day Street, which were based in, I think, Brooklyn, a part of HarperCollins. And I set about writing this book. It took me 2 years to write it. But there was a thread through it, which was our own biography, really. So, or autobiographical. So it was about my attraction to Austin, why I moved there, how great it was when I moved there, why people moved there back in the day, and then what had happened. So it was the evolution of Austin over the last it was a 20-year time span. So I just took all these big themes like climate change and politics and guns and, everything else, and just sort of tried to make sense of it all. Architecture as well. I know it's kind of maybe not a reason to leave a city, but I mean, it just changed. Like architecturally, it was just a different place as well.
Right. And you said at one point that Austin's at the forefront of climate change. How so?
Yeah, I mean, look, the fact is that Austin, the water in Austin, for people living in Austin, comes from an aquifer underneath the city. And the aquifer is porous. It's made of limestone. So it's like sort of a porous kind of thing that is... So when water fills the aquifer, it also fills the rivers and everything else, kind of all these water holes that kind of emerge around Austin. So if there's a problem with one, there's a problem with all of it. And they had worked out that this water was not finite, that there was just not enough water at the rate that Austin was growing to be able to be enough for the people living there. So there was a water problem. There's a water problem in Texas. There's a reason why T. Boone Pickens, who's one of the most famous oil men in Texas in history, started to buy up like land over aquifers before his death, because he saw money in water,
right?
And pumping it down to the parched parts of the state. So, yeah, I mean, luckily there's been a bit of a pause button pressed, because I think a lot of the people that moved there realized maybe it was a bit hotter than they thought it was, and the prices have kind of come down. I think that it's never going to be the city it was, and it's still great. It's still, when I go back there, I love it, and I love my friends that live there and all the rest of it, and the food. It's great to kind of dip into, but it's not somewhere I would want to live anymore.
And how did you get from there to Rhinebeck?
We went on a road trip with some friends of ours. We knew we wanted to move to the Northeast, so we wanted to be a closer flight to home, and we didn't know where, so we decided to do a road trip around the Northeast, and we went to towns in Rhode Island and New Hampshire, southern Maine, like all over. We just took two friends from Austin and flew to Newark and just rented a car and did a whole big road trip. And I had done some research beforehand into were the schools any good and were the houses kind of reasonably priced. And we just would check off places like, Hanover, New Hampshire. No, just felt like the place I went to university in, which I would never live in again. So it's just not a nice place. No offense to anyone that loves Hanover or lives there, but it wasn't for me. Kittery, southern Maine. Is southern Maine?
Wow.
Lovely. Where we actually came down to two places, Kingston and, North Kingstown in Rhode Island, which is there's a little town on the river called, forget the name of it. Why can't I remember it? Two Negronis.
There we go. Not good for the memory.
No, but it's Wickford Village, and it's beautiful. It's a little fishing village, and the school was really good. But the school wasn't great in Kingston at the time, so somebody said, "Oh, you should check over the river in Rhinebeck," and we came over to the school. Really liked the principal of the elementary school, and loved the school, and found a house like just in the nick of time because everybody had moved up from the city. We didn't know that at the time, but.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. What a crazy story.
Yeah.
And are you happy you didn't land in Kingston?
No, I love Kingston. Kingston reminds us of Austin 30 years ago, honestly.
Oh,
Yeah, I love Kingston.
it's a pretty hip place.
Yeah, Kingston was sort of more our speed, I think, at the time.
So,
But I love Rhinebeck. You know, we'd never lived in the country before, nor had my wife. She's lived in Dallas and London. I've lived in London and Austin, and we found ourselves. I bought a chainsaw on day one, and living on some woodland.
in a helmet and some good gloves and like good boots and
Yeah.
good. Have you ever written about Kingston?
No, I've never really written about this area. I think I didn't really write about Austin till I left. So maybe I'll do it when I go.
Right. And where would you go to?
Dish the dirt.
Yeah. Good. Make sure you spell my name right.
No, I think, we've always said we've always said we would love to divide our time between America and England, 50-50, and we've never been able to because of school. But Scout's only got another 3.5 years left, and then we can probably spend a bit of time in England again. Or maybe not full time, but
And where in England would you go?
London,
Yeah.
missing it.
And where in London?
Probably East London, where we
Okay.
used to have an apartment in a flat in East London near the river, and we loved it. Yeah.
Now, is that where that show EastEnders was located?
Yeah, EastEnders was near where I was born, actually, but where we lived was actually south of the river, which is kind of funny because I grew up in London, enough in London to know that you never go south of the river, mate. So you used to get a black cab in north and say, "Can I go to Waterloo?" Don't go south of the river.
Really?
There's a divide, and now of course with Uber they'll just go anywhere. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, the underground goes everywhere.
yeah, but no, not the black cabs. Not back then. Don't
I
go
never
south
knew
of the
that.
river, no.
Back then being the 70s and 80s. And
Yeah, there's a sort of divide, north-south divide. in London.
Interesting. I'm not sure I ever knew that.
But then my wife was looking for apartments when we bought ours. I can't remember when it was now. And she said, I found this really good one in Rotherhithe. And I said, not going to Rotherhithe, not living down in Rotherhithe. She'd just look at it. So I went south of the river for the first time in my
Oh,
life.
that's so funny.
And it was great.
And what are the things you miss most about England?
I miss friends and family. And I don't miss the weather really got me down in the winter because it's not cold like here. It's not as cold as here, and it doesn't snow in London.
Right.
But it's just miserable for a very long time. And so I got really bad seasonal affective disorder, I think. And,
Right.
the only escape is the pub, and when you're sort of drinking to escape, it's not great. So try hiding away in the pub just to kind of like drown your sorrows.
Not
But
ideal.
I miss living in a big city. But no offense to the New Yorkers out there, but it is not a patch on London. And you can write in to Norm
Throwing down.
Magnuson.
I'm sorry, I was talking over the email address you're trying to share.
Can I
for complaints.
can I shit on New York a bit more while we're here?
Yeah, please.
Stinks. It just
I'll give you my credit card number. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
All right, we had 10 seconds left.
Oh,
What's
10
your
seconds.
favorite thing about Rhinebeck, apart from me and Jen in the show and the Epicurean?
Oh, Rhinebeck's lovely. It's you know what? I tell you, I'm going to steal a phrase. And what did he say it was? It was okay. So Evan Hughes, who's my mate, that's an author, lives here, said when I first met him, said, "You know what? Rhinebeck's sickeningly nice, isn't it?" And he's right.
It is. It's
Sickeningly
lovely.
nice.
And so are you. And thanks for coming on the show and
Thanks for having
talking.
me.
Alex Hannaford. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Jen Hammoud, producer extraordinary, for putting this on. The Epicurean and Patricia Wind in particular for hosting the Nook here where we broadcast from. Have a great weekend, everybody.